Opportunity, and
Hello and welcome to the EDU-TALK Diabetes Series, hosted by Easy Therapeutic Diabetes Creams and Lotions, Biotone, and diabetes health and wellness experts. With the daily challenges of diabetes and growing interest in health and wellness strategies, the EDU-TALK Diabetes Series supports building your wellness community by connecting you with diabetes health experts who share their knowledge and expertise on topics of concern to provide you the tools and resources to support and manage a healthy lifestyle. Today's expert is Dr. Michael Shea, who specializes in infants and adults with metabolic challenges. He's author of 8 books on biodynamic craniosacral therapy, one of which he reviewed for the EDU-TALK author series, which can be found on biotone.com under the EDU-TALK tab. Michael is a founding board member of the Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy Association of North America and is an Army veteran with 100% service-related PTSD with the Veterans Administration. Let's listen and learn as Michael explores type 2 diabetes as a metabolic syndrome. Metabolically, hyperinsulinemia driving type 2 diabetes is caused from excessive carbohydrate intake. Michael examines the role of processed foods and foods with added sugars, which initiate a cascade of endocrine events between the pancreas and liver, disrupting the energy metabolism of every cell in the body. Take note, yes, reversing type 2 diabetes is possible. And with that, again, thank you for joining us. Feel free to chat questions and comments, which Michael will answer at the end. And Michael, I know you have a lot to get to. Thank you for joining us. And I will see you on the other side to help you out with chats. The screen is all yours. Thanks.
oh, thank you, Danielle, and thank you for this opportunity. And I want to thank also Biotone and Easy for this opportunity to provide this information free of charge. And I also want to thank Dale Alexander. Dale was very helpful in urging me to focus a lot on metabolism as I saw the trend happening in the field of massage therapy and our health in general in the past couple of decades. So Dale, I want to thank you very much for bringing me along, pushing me in that direction, and for this collaboration that we're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing your presentation in August as well. So thank you for that. And what I'm going to do now is share the screen, and we'll go through a PowerPoint presentation here. So this is, you can see what I'm up to on my website, which is not really a lot, but in this particular situation here, type 2 diabetes, my sister and I actually authored a book for Handspring publication almost a decade ago. And unfortunately, it didn't make it through the editorial process. And now it's gone through a process where it's one of my biodynamic books, and we'll take a look at that shortly. But I want to talk about some of the causes, some of the conditions, and some of the antidotes. We have to also understand that when we talk about a metabolic condition, it's going to be multifactorial, and there will be other comorbidities associated with it. So I'll be talking about these dynamics and possible solutions, antidotes, and so forth as we go along. So as Danielle mentioned, we did a piece on this book, my current book that's out, The Biodynamics of the Immune System, Balancing the Energies of the Body with the Cosmos. And so some of the information that I'm presenting now is already located in that book. And my wife has also contributed several chapters to that book. And I'll be talking about that particular style or model for looking at type 2 diabetes. I want to create a very general situation right here of where type 2 diabetes is located, and it's called a metabolic syndrome, of which cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, obesity, that pandemic that's going on in the world, these are all metabolic syndromes, and they're all related to one another in terms of causality and so forth. But basically, it's very challenging to try to define metabolic syndrome. But I also have a background as an academic embryologist, and I can tell you that the way the human body is constructed in our first 9 months of life, and especially in the first 8 weeks, is that incoming nutrition is the primary metabolic vector that's going on in the embryo, and outgoing waste. So anabolic, catabolic, we know those terms, but imagine that our whole being originally is having that orientation in terms of our metabolism, and how rapidly all of this has to grow in order to get nutrition in and waste products out. So there's multiple channels for getting the nutrition in, getting it out, all the way to the cellular level, all the way to the skin and sweating and the large intestine and so forth. The simplest definition of metabolic syndrome is that these incoming nutrition and outgoing waste channels are blocked. Okay, just keep it really simple. And remember, there are multiple nutritional channels and multiple waste channels, from the molecular to the system-wide dynamic, particularly with the lung and large intestine and skin and so forth. One of the big wake-up calls I had was when I got asked to review this book by Ruth Werner for massage therapists in its 7th edition. And I actually reviewed the chapter on the cardiovascular system, because that's really also a specialty of mine. And my new book is all about the cardiovascular system. But so let's look at Ruth's definition. Type 2 diabetes is listed as an endocrine system condition. Okay. And I want to quote from her book, the next page on 461. Type 2 diabetes can be controllable with diet, exercise, and possibly some anti-diabetes drugs, depending on how far advanced it is when treatment begins. Let me just share with you that metabolic syndromes and type 2 diabetes generally have been gestating in our bodies metabolically for probably a decade without symptoms. And if something that long has been literally damaging the genes in our body, the ends that are called telomeres that get damaged, until finally there's a breakdown in these incoming nutrition channels and outgoing, where it becomes symptomatic and we have to do something about it. So remember, these situations don't happen overnight, folks. This has been gestating for a long time. And I have a feeling that, especially with type 2 diabetes, when I look at the literature, that this can be reversible. It's one of the more, easy isn't the right word. It's one of the metabolic syndromes that you can reverse almost exclusively with diet and exercise. Some of the other ones are more difficult to reverse, especially in terms of the genetics when it's damaged for so long. And some researchers are saying that some of these metabolic problems will take several generations in a family lineage to repair because of how damaging they are, ultimately leading to multiple organ failure, and is what you see in ICU units in hospitals from these conditions. Don't want to scare you. We are going to die one way or another, but there's perhaps better ways to die than multiple organ failure in an intensive care unit in a hospital. So One of the focuses in the model that my wife and I work with is that the immune system is overloaded. And I think many of us watching this right now have gotten that message. I like to say that we live in the decade now of the immune system, and because we hear a lot about it, and the immune system is overloaded. And it's because of dietary choices, lifestyle choices, and in particular, degradation of the small and large intestine. And that's very important to remember because I teach a lot in Europe with my wife. So we're exposed to, and we teach at medical clinics. We teach at a prestigious cancer clinic, alternative cancer clinic in Switzerland. And the medical doctors and the ones we work with in Switzerland and throughout Europe are saying that the primary cause of metabolic problems and the primary cause of, let's say, cancer and type 2 diabetes is coming from the small and large intestine, the degradation of the small and large intestine, which creates systemic inflammation. So the image on the right talks about the toxic load. And if we've been doing a diet and leading a lifestyle for the past decade that is toxic, and really overloading us, then it's just one more donut, one more Krispy Kreme, one more cigarette, one more whatever, that takes us over and symptoms manifest. So it's a toxic load and it overflows. The barrel of symptoms overflows. One of the challenges and comorbidities with type 2 diabetes is obesity. I'm very, very familiar with that. I'll show you a picture of myself shortly. And there's a term in the literature called obesity swamp. And we see frequently when are in grocery stores or gas stations or wherever that before you check out, you're invited to really just have a go into a diabetic coma. I think these were these gigantic boxes of M&Ms and so forth for $1.49. That's actually pretty amazing. So people can really just stock up. I like to call them diabetic starter kits. And that's the challenge is how do we ignore this? How do we, get what we need that's healthy at the stores where we shop, and how do we ignore these other temptations? Sugar, just to say, is 8 times more powerful than cocaine. Literature is really, really clear. It's more powerful than cocaine. It's a very, very tough addiction to break, the sugar addiction, which is a primary factor in type 2 diabetes. In terms of the American Medical Association, it's really this is stunning. I've looked at this literature a lot, and so this is very accurate. 9 out of 10 Americans are classified as metabolically sick. And here are the stages in terms of the metabolic syndrome. We see in stage 1, okay, no problems. Well, that's 7 to 10% of the population has no problem. But then when we get into stage 2, we get into overweight and obesity. And that was my entry into it. When I got out of the military, I was morbidly obese. I weighed about 100 more pounds than I do now. Right now, I weigh about 165. And when I got out of the Army, I was 265. But my mother said I carried the weight pretty well. She didn't think I was overweight. I'm 6'4", 6'5", and I love my mother for saying that. She was very positive around all the challenges I faced when I got out of the service. But what happens is over time with the obesity and overweight, you develop type 2 diabetes or kidney disease. It's more typical to develop the type 2 diabetes. However, the kidney disease will be implicated. That's why one of the world's leading nephrologists, who is an expert at reducing type 2 diabetes, Dr. Jason Fung in Toronto, Canada, is also a nephrologist and expert in kidney disease, sees that relationship all the time. And then stage 4, where you get cardiovascular metabolic disease. And basically what some of the docs are saying now, even the functional medicine docs here in the United States, is that every patient is a vascular patient. Everybody has some challenge because when that diet and lifestyle disrupts the small and large intestine and creates inflammation, and then that inflammation becomes systemic. Where does it become systemic? In the endothelium of the vascular tree. Not totally, it depends on your genetics, but that inflammation spreads. It goes to the liver. The liver has to convert all this excess carb into white fat, and then it spreads that white fat all over the organs of the body and the mesentery. And then it's just hugely challenging. White fat is an inflammatory cell. I'll say that again. White fat is an inflammatory cell. When you see someone who's overweight or obese, you're looking at someone who's carrying a lot of inflammation. And it's that inflammation and that obesity and the white fat also creates hormones that feed cancer. I'll say that again. Obesity and white fat creates hormones that feed cancer. So again, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, the cardiovascular system is compromised because of the endothelium and so forth, and the inflammation. And at the bottom, I put in, this means that almost the entire nation is in need of treatment, okay? So what are the antidotes? We want to feed the gut, and we want to protect the liver, and we want to take care of our brain. That's one way of looking at it. So how are we going to do that? So let's look at Michael. I think I was 24 years old. I know that was me, but I'm 76 now, and I'm like, wow, I know that was historically me, but I don't know that person anymore. But as I said, I was discharged from the Army in 1973, and I weighed 265 pounds. I had just been through a fairly significant terrorist bombing attack that was really challenging for me. And one of the ways I dealt with it, because there was no therapy for that back then, except get back to work, yes, sir, was I ate myself into oblivion, really ate myself into oblivion, and got a really, really profound sugar addiction going. So what's in the literature now is called processed food, ultra processed food. There's various definitions of it. There's a lot of pushback from food corporations about whether their food is good or not. I put this list together because it kind of, they all start with P, processed food, pizza, pasta, pumpernickel, meaning bread, pastries, Pepsi, pepperoni, added sugars, artificial sweeteners, seed oils, the omega-6 varieties. And my wife asked me to put this one at the bottom, the last bullet point, anything that is delivered through the window of your car. And I teach at a massage school periodically in St. Louis. And I found out that in parts of America, there are up to 20 to 30% of people that eat all of their meals every day through a drive-in window. They go into a fast food place and they get it delivered through the window. All 3 meals a day. That area on the Mississippi River where I teach, 100 miles north and south, is the highest incidence of colon cancer in the United States, and extremely cases of obesity and overweight. So this cartoon says Jerry's Pizza, which we deliver anyway. That's what obviously these people, unfortunately, are obese and they're in hell. And the devil is saying, okay, I'm sending this pizza back right now, but whoever ordered this, I'm going to have a little talk with. So here we have, now we kind of put things together with what I've just said. There's a lot of discussion in the literature about coronary artery plaque. And there's also information about the high fat and then the Mediterranean diet, high fat meaning olive oil and the good oils and so forth. And then the regular physical activity and stress reduction, smoking cessation. And you know For those of us that have been in the massage therapy industry for a while, when you start trying to give homework to people or make suggestions to people like this about changing their diet, they go into overwhelm. And I think that's a big issue, again, in general with our country. When 9 out of 10 people are sick, they're also on overwhelm. And it's very, very challenging when you have these metabolic problems because it creates what's called brain fog. You can't think straight. Um, Dementia is, in some research literature, is called type 3 diabetes. Dementia is called type 3 diabetes. And what's coming out about dementia is that, once again, the nutrition has a hard time getting in because the waste products, the amyloid plaque, is having a hard time getting out of the cells and out of those really tight junctions in the blood-brain barrier. So they build up and they block the nutrition. Okay. So insulin resistance occurs, the relationship between the sugar, the excess carbohydrates, and the systemic inflammation. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on insulin or the pancreas or the liver. I'm hoping Dale will do that. I'm not putting you on the spot, Dale, but I don't want to go there right now. I want to keep going with this information. This is the model that my wife and I work with, and this is the medical doctor, Dr. Thomas Rao. He ran the prestigious Paracelsus Clinic for many years, and now he's downsized into a smaller clinic called Swiss Biological Medicine International. It's a very prestigious alternative cancer clinic. And he works with these three pillars, the detoxification. So we saw the barrel that's associated with his model and the need for detoxification. So in his model, that includes getting all the metal and root canal teeth out of your mouth, because that's the top end of your GI tube. And then the detoxification with the large intestine, the colon hydrotherapy, and there are other therapies that he employs regarding detoxification, infrared heat, sweating, these types of things. There are also chelation-oriented therapies, IV therapies that have detoxification biochemistry in them that really help the liver. And there are functional medicine people all over the United States. We work with several within several miles of where we live here. And I will sometimes go and get a chelation or an IV bag with to support my liver and so forth. So the second pillar is the immune and intestinal health. So I want to say something about the immune system. I know most everybody will know that it's got two parts. It's got an innate part, and then it's got a what's the other part, Carl? The innate and the acquired immune system. So the innate we come in with, and then we acquire parts of the immune system that's able to fight or resist different pathogens when they come into our body. The switching mechanism between the innate and acquired immune system is located in your small intestine. So if you've got a problem with your intestinal health, and what happens with excessive carbohydrate loading in your intestines and processed food, coming from processed food, and added sugars and preservatives that are in food that destroy the gut microbiome, then that creates leaky gut. It destroys the boundary integrity of the epithelial lining of the gut. And so now you get all sorts of molecules that were not designed to come in, and they cross and they get to the liver, and then we're off and running in this challenge. So really building up immune and intestinal health, and especially through the microbiome. So the intestinal health at this middle pillar right here is about the microbiome. And I got a little bit on that shortly. And then the regeneration is, how do you rebuild? How do you rebuild the epithelial lining of the gut? And so there'll be some information later on about a low carb, high fat, high quality fat diet, also high quality protein, and also bone broth. For the vegans and vegetarians listening, I'll show you a book on vegan keto. So all of this is available through a vegetarian dynamic if you're not a meat eater. So those are the three pillars for the repair. This is the model that we work with, no matter what people come in with, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and so forth. This is the model we start with. We start detoxifying immune intestinal health and regeneration. So we see here, I just mentioned this, the liver gets overloaded, the intestinal permeability is challenged, there's detoxification problems. Oxidative stress means the oxygen molecule in your body starts generating different molecules that are not healthy, called free radicals, and they're destructive to our body. And then you have all the pantheon of drugs. I think 8 out of 10 Americans are on a prescription drug and so forth. So the diabetic starter kits, we come back to that. We can see, once again, checking out in the checkout line, we see cosmic brownies and all sorts of glazed pies and so forth, all of which are probably 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 grams of sugar in one of these. It's way too much. You really need to think about 10 grams or less per day. And especially when you're reading a label, I would be very scared. If anybody listening to this right now, I would be very scared when you read a label if there's anything more than 10 grams of sugar. Glow-in-the-dark diabetes liquid. Do not drink this poison. New research, July 2024, popular weight loss and diabetes drugs linked to increased risk of rare form of blindness. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about diabetes drugs or obesity drugs at this point. That's another whole topic. I want us to stay really focused on what we can do with ourselves, with our diet, and so forth. So the epithelial lining of the gut tube degrades. We can see that right in here. This is where the epithelium is, and also where the gut microbiome is located. And also the vagus nerve, the metabolic vagus nerve comes down, and it is talking to that epithelium. It is talking to that immune system there. It is talking to that microbiome, those 3 layers, those 3 levels that are on the surface of our epithelium there. And we've got that hookup. And then we've got the enteric nervous system that goes to the spinal cord and then back up to the brain. So here's leaky gut syndrome. Gut inflammation creates hyperinsulinemia, inability to process carbs. White fat is created by the liver. Cells do not get proper nutrition, okay? They don't get the energy they need to create ATP from the mitochondria. So there's mitochondrial damage. So when you go and get tested for all this stuff, I do consult after consult nowadays, and I hear the current terminology is mitochondrial damage from some of the blood tests that these clients that have type 2 diabetes. And you see that these molecules come through, they get into the bloodstream, they go to the liver, and so forth. So it all starts in the gut. Really want to point that out again and again and again. Digestive care. And I don't have a particular solution for you. There's a zillion dietary books. The idea is that you have a model that you work with, detoxifying the intestinal repair and the regeneration, and really taking care of your microbiome, which is now linked to well over 100 psychological disorders and pretty well linked now to both depression and, as of the last 2 weeks, autism. So this is a lovely book by Brenda Watson. I don't know if you know her work, but we have such a problem with our guts, as I've been pointing out. And Brenda is an expert in the production with her company of producing probiotics and so forth. And what I recommend is you start to learn how to ferment foods and getting fermented foods into your diet. But she made an interesting point that we are so challenged with our gut, and it's been gestating for so long that some of the really critical, important microbial species in our gut are becoming extinct. So really, I'm pointing out some huge challenge here. The bacteroides that you're looking at in the upper right-hand corner, they are considered to be like a key important part of your gut microbiome. You can have a functional medicine doctor or your doctor get a comprehensive stool test and find out about the composition of your microbiome. I did that for many years. I grow mangoes, and so at the end of the summer, for 2 years in a row, after eating 5 mangoes a day, I would get stool tested, and I found that my microbiome was in the 99th healthy percentile. Am I still a little crazy? A little bit. So this is in my book. So I just want to say one of the ways in which I managed my obesity was I started intermittent fasting. I actually did really long fasts. I did a 40-day water fast once upon a time when I was 26 years old and I was in massage school. Don't think I would want to try that now at my age, but here's the idea. What I recommend, if you can go between 12 and 18 hours between your dinner meal and the first thing you eat in the morning, that would be really, really most helpful. And the longer you go, the more the intricate cellular detox pathways have of clearing themselves. So the gold standards in terms of the research literature on intermittent fasting is 18 hours and 36 hours regularly. Okay. So what does regularly mean? I manage 12 to 14 hours almost every day. I manage 18 hours maybe once a month, and once a quarter, like this week, starting tomorrow, I'm going to do a 36-hour intermittent fast on just liquid water, nothing that will interfere with the metabolism, so that the what's called autophagy can start, and it's right here, improve cell signaling autophagy, which is the waste removal. That's the final waste removal of debris out of your cells. And at the 36-hour mark, your cells are really cleaning up. So there's a lot of ways to parse this out, but I do recommend just starting, if you can, with 12 hours. If you're hyperglycemic, you need a nutritional coach. Intermittent fasting tops calorie restriction for gut health. So this just came out recently. So the calorie in, calorie out model is kind of been debunked. I don't use that model anymore. So it's just linked to a really failed nutrition science that's not functional anymore. I don't want to get into that right now, but intermittent fasting, you can see that there's really good literature on it. And this is Jason Fung and MD and Megan Ramos. Megan has written a book on intermittent fasting for women because it turns out that male and female metabolism is slightly different, and it's important to parse that out. And Megan's book just came out within this past year on intermittent fasting for women. But once again, you can see his organization is called the Fasting Method. So I subscribe to their newsletter, so I get up-to-date information. And Jason Fung also publishes in Medium, which is another website with brilliant, brilliant articles. And he's really a good writer. And his first book, called Obesity Code, is brilliant, just brilliant. Robert Lustig is another favorite of mine. He's the international leading authority on sugar and sugar addiction. He is a pediatric neuroendocrinologist. I mentioned this at the beginning. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Boy, if there's anything you can do to reduce the weight and all of that, it's start working on that sugar thing. the added sugar thing. I'm not talking about the sugar that's in your fruit that's naturally occurring. I'm talking about the added sugars and stuff like that. And his real food movement is critical for healing. I like that, real food. And there's a big movement on the West Coast, meaning California. They've already gotten real food curriculums into elementary schools and affecting well over 100,000 children. And I like to say in my new the book on the immune system that your kitchen is the new emergency room. You need a health coach and medical supervision if you are diagnosed with a metabolic syndrome. I would not recommend trying this on your own if you have a diagnosed condition. And you can usually find a doc with that's called IFM certified, Institute for Functional Medicine. And they are very up to date with this information. So eat real, the real food beat. I love this logo of theirs. Eat real, eat real. The processed food addiction is something that we really have to get over. There's 3 types of sugar, polysaccharides, disaccharides, and monosaccharides that all have to go through, when you do processed food, all of those have to be broken down through other different metabolic pathways. You're overwhelming your genetics and your gut trying to sort out these different carbohydrates. So, and we want to be able to also choose low glycemic index food choices. So, little cartoon that I found on the internet. You got to start eating from a different parking lot. I just thought I'd show you one piece of research. This is, let me see, what year is it? 2023. So this is last year. There's a fair amount of good literature coming out. 77% of this cohort achieved remission on a low-carb diet from type 2 diabetes. So come on, folks. I'm not saying it's easy. I know what I went through to break the habits I was in. And I know what I had to do decade by decade by decade in order to heal myself. And that it's an ongoing situation. It's not a one pill, one diet, you're done in 2 weeks, one and done. That's not the way it works. This is a shift in who you are and how you're relating to your body, your gut, and how you're relating to what you're doing in the grocery store and what you're doing in terms of your own home. Are you growing some of your own food? We have 12 mango trees here. We have avocado trees. We have papaya trees. We have a very, very big herb garden. And we're starting during the winter, we grow different salads and squashes. Whatever you can do to convert some part of where you live to real live food is very important. I worked with infants and children with moderate to severe brain damage for most all of my career for 40 years. I have seen a lot of infants and children with severe brain damage, fetal cocaine syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal heroin syndrome. I can remember treating a baby with fetal heroin syndrome right here on the living room floor. It's tragic. And I've been tracking a child for 36 years now that was born with fetal cocaine syndrome. And what we know from the 1920s, and this was sent to me by the University of Florida, as a friend of mine works up at the Shands Clinic in the pediatric neurology department, is that when you get kids on a low carb, high fat diet, good fats, their brain function improves. So it's not a big leap to take that into the adult population. And I know there's a lot of pushback, and people are sometimes afraid of the whole keto thing. Why humans don't need dietary carbohydrates to thrive. This was an article you can you'll be receiving this presentation, and you can look these folks up on the internet. The ketogenic diet is a very high fat, low carb diet, which has a fasting-like effect, bringing the body into a state of ketosis. The presence of ketone bodies has a neuroprotective impact on aging brain cells. Moreover, their production may enhance mitochondrial function, reduce the expression of inflammatory and apoptotic mediators. Apoptotic is programmed cell death. Apoptosis is how each cell knows that it's going to die, how it's going to die, when it's going to die, and how its dying process is going to be facilitated, whether it's going to be chunked up and go out in parts, or it's going to be repurposed and recycled somewhere else in the body, in your bones and so forth. So these apoptotic mediators in terms of these pathways are really, really important. I like that avocado affirmation. You're fat, but you're good fat. This was the vegan keto book that I recommend. The short and long-term health benefits of nutritional ketosis more than justify the efforts needed to achieve and maintain it. The valuable effect of sustained nutritional ketosis include reduced inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, in addition to a reduction in hunger and cravings. In combination, these benefits of nutritional ketosis predictably lead to improved metabolic health and major weight loss. This is another woman that I follow. She's a world-leading authority, Nina Teicholz. You can sign up for her newsletter. I like her a lot. Get to know what are good fats for you. What are good fats for you? This is another leading authority, Catherine Shanahan. Really, really good information here. She's the author of Deep Nutrition. If you want to start with Deep Nutrition first, that would be good. This is my new book that's coming out next year in the spring, The Biodynamic Heart, Somatic Compassion Practices for a Clear and Vital Heart. And I want to show you, just as we finish up on this presentation, that I'm going to talk a lot in the book, in the teaching I do, on interoceptive awareness is the key to hormonal balance. And ghrelin is the hunger hormone and leptin the satiety hormone. You've got, in terms of everything I've said, now the next piece is, how do you know when you feel full and stop? And how do you know when you're hungry? Okay, and you go towards getting food. And the ghrelin hormone around knowing when you're hungry is a very, very important hormone. There's a lot of more literature coming out on that recently. And so we see here in this dynamic how metabolism then is linked to physiology and homeostatic stability. And you'll be getting this. Body awareness via interoception builds autonomy, resilience, and self-regulation. You've got to know the signaling that's already happening in your body and pay attention to it. I talk about that in the immune book. My wife talks about it, and there'll be a big piece about it in terms of interoception in my new book. Your body knows how to heal itself. And there's really, for me, only self-healing. I've been in this business for a long time. I can help facilitate another person. I can give them guidance. I cannot do the healing work for them. Everybody has to do it for themselves with help. And self-healing is the key point here, is to wake up the instinct for self-healing. And finally, waking up the instinct for self-transcendence, which is all tied in, our inner spiritual architecture. Your illness is wasted unless you are transformed by it. That's an ancient proverb. I just posted several weeks ago on my YouTube channel, Michael Shea, Obesity Part 1. So if you want to go and look at that, please do. That's the link right there. You'll be getting this presentation in the next day or so. And finally, a couple of resources here. My sister, Sheila, who's very generously donated some of the chapters from one of my books that she wrote. You'll be getting that handout. But she is an expert with the colon hydrotherapy and gut nutrition. And this is her information in Tucson, Arizona. You're going to receive handouts from this book. This is my volume 4, Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy. And there's 5 or 6 chapters written by my sister regarding the whole sugar paradigm and the carbohydrate paradigm. And you'll be getting that. And thank you, Sheila, for that. And finally, my wife, Kathy, who's also a colon hydrotherapist and a nutritional coach. And this is her mentor, Dr. Thomas Rao. He's a tremendous, tremendous human being, expert in alternative treatments for cancer and diabetes and metabolic problems in general. If you ever have a chance to meet him, work with him, he does come to the United States periodically and teach. And basically, a lot of what I just presented is from him. He's a delightful human being. Okay, I think that's it for now. Donnell,
Yes.
I think we have about 12, 15 minutes left. I hope I didn't go over too long.
You're fine.
Oh,
You're good. We do have time for questions and comments, and we'd love to hear from you. Um, you know,
Donnell, are you going to mediate this, or do I need
I
to?
will read the chat questions to you.
Okay.
And Dale Alexander did have a comment. Superb descriptions, Michael. Such excellent resources for people to dig into what makes sense to them. Fabulous overview. And you really did include quite a good wealth of information for people to go out and start researching for their health and health improvement. And something very, very, very basic is we take our food shopping for granted. And we are going to grab that thing off the shelf where we know it is, and we'll never look at the labels. And I would like to encourage people once again to take time to read the label and look for that added sugar line along with the carbohydrates. We did have an EDU-TALK diabetes series earlier in the year by Linda Lockett Brown, and she did address reading labels and the dangers of, basically what's lurking in your food. Let's see, tell me your opinion about the Mediterranean style diet. That and that is from P710. So I'm not sure who will address with that, but
Well, I
what
think
is your opinion?
I like the Mediterranean diet. I've taught and worked and vacation in Italy for 30 years. We now have a lot of time where we like to vacation now in Greece. And olive oil is sacred. It's a sacred oil, and in general. And then the diet, there's an interesting book called the Peyopi diet, written by, what's his name? He's a cardiologist in London, Asim Malhotra. But the Peyopi diet is from a town in Italy. It's a really good indication of how Italians can live to well over 100 years old. When you go into these towns and you see all these really incredibly old people, they're eating the diet. You know what they're eating? You know what a Mediterranean diet is? Real food. It's real food, and it's good quality oil, because it's coming right from their area where the olive oil is made. So it's just stunning. I'll just say this because it's interesting, having spent a lot of time in Tuscany, and you go into the restaurants, the food, absolutely incredible. And one of the reasons why it's against the law in Italy, if you're in a region like Tuscany, to allow any other food that's supposed to be Tuscan oriented to come in and be served to you and cooked. So they keep their food really pure, really clean as best they can. We could get into a whole rap on that, but it gets down to real food, folks, real food and real good oils.
And Shari is asking, talk about how you manage to eat 5 mangoes a day. I just looked up mangoes on is a Chronometer, and it says 1 mango can have 50 grams of carbs and 45 grams of sugar. How is this fruit processed differently?
You know, it's called real food, and it's called a food matrix. These are organic mangoes, okay? And every one of them is going to have a different profile in terms of, if we analyze it, how much sugar and all of that. But what they find out is if I read that stuff and it says you're going to get 35 grams of sugar from this mango or 30, that's a lie. That's impossible because it's chelated. There's a matrix in it in which the fructose is linked to other molecules in the mango or in the piece of fruit or in the food you're eating. This is why the caloric model needs to be thrown out. So I don't worry about, I don't have I was pre-diabetic when I was obese, but I'm not concerned about the fruit sugar. And because it's a simple sugar, it's a monosaccharide, and it's going to get in what is allowed to come in with the other minerals and vitamins and so forth that are part of that piece of fruit, because the food matrix has not been disturbed and processed and created into something else that molecularly your liver can't recognize it. There are so many sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox here. There are so many food additives in our food that the human body does not even recognize it. It doesn't know what to do with some of these molecules. It has to encapsulate it in fat and then stuff it away in your organs or around your heart. It's incredible what's going on. Sorry, I just got on my
No,
soap.
thank you for that. Um, Irmgard is asking, a friend who grew up in the Mediterranean region mentioned that he heard of concerns that olive oil used in cooking can contribute to stomach cancer. Have you ever heard of this?
Um, yes. And the reason being, and Nina Teichholz talks about this in her books, and the reason being is that olive oil is not the best oil to cook with because molecularly it breaks down in high heat. That's why avocado oil is the recommended oil because it doesn't break down. And once you start breaking down an oil and its molecular composition changes, these lipids have a life of their own in your body. And it's a very difficult dynamic to understand. That's why learning from somebody like Nina Teichholz or Kate Shanahan is very helpful. But I think that link is because cooking olive oil, it doesn't like to be cooked. It likes to be put on fruits and vegetables and salads and so forth.
And there's another question, but I would like to jump in here again. If you go to the archive library for the EDU-TALK Diabetes series, Linda Lockett Brown also did a presentation and EDU-TALK on good fats, bad fats, and she does go through the oils. So I'd like to I'll include a link to that archive library tomorrow in the follow-up. And Michael did reference that his PowerPoint presentation would be included in the follow-up email. So that will go out tomorrow with the recording, Michael's contact information, and what am I forgetting? The recording, the contact information, and the handout.
And the
And
handouts.
maybe I'm having brain fog, but please watch your inbox for that to arrive. And if you don't see it in the afternoon, please check spam or junk. Now, Shari is asking again, could you talk about the quality of olive oil that is used in Mediterranean diet? My sense is that in this country, we are pouring more olive oil on our food on keto diets than would, where did it go? Then would be used in a traditional setting. Isn't olive oil a limited resource if you are growing it locally?
I don't know about the limited resource dynamic. It's a sacred food in Greece. We had a visit, we went on vacation and for the first time in the island of Corfu in Greece 2 years ago and found out they had 4 million olive trees on the island. And so we visited these olive groves and we looked at all the some of them, the lectures on the research. So here's some of the things to consider. Olive oil degrades unless it's in a can or a dark container. And olive oil, you should only buy olive oil that has a date on it in terms of expiration. Because once the olive oil, let's say it's extra virgin and so forth, once it's canned or bottled, it's got a limited life shelf. I don't know what exactly that is. So look for olive oils that have an expiration date, number one, and also look for olive oils that are in a can. My wife and I will only buy olive oil now in a can, and then we will transfer it to a dark bottle for table use. But that's just what we learned when we were in Greece, and the olives and the olive trees are sacred. And there's a big production in the United States and California as well for olives.
Just a second, I was sharing some information.
Good.
We have another minute or two to address questions or comments to Michael. You know, again, if we can just recap this, you know, I think it's very basic and something we can do tomorrow or tonight, walk into the pantry and look at the food labels. Keep in mind eating real food. And Michael, how would you finish this up? Start
Reduce.
thinking
Uh,
there's damage and start repairing?
you know, that's the theory. And then the practical part of we all have our lives that we have to enter into, and we've got to deal with however, you know, our diet and how we eat and all that. But I think the main takeaway, I would say, is reduce sugar in all of its forms. Processed food and the complex carbohydrates are very damaging. Added sugars, wherever you're getting your sugar from, take a look at that, begin to try to reduce it, and just notice if you have an addiction to it and how difficult that is. So that I would offer that, and get some nutritional coaching, because depending on your age and what decade of life you're in, you have different requirements nutritionally and otherwise. My sister is 80 years old. My wife is 70. They have considerable experience in nutritional coaching. And my sister, in particular, with the gut and psychology syndrome diet, she's certified in the GAPS diet work. So get some help if you want, but begin by reducing sugar and eat real food whenever you can.
Good points. I'm curious about your take on beans and legumes. They are fairly high carb, but are a basis of all of the blue zones.
I don't know what blue zones are, and I tend to restrict my intake of beans and legumes mainly because they give me so much gas, it bloats me and kills me. It's painful. So, and
Parting words.
yeah, Shari, I know Shari. So Shari, thank you for that. But I think it's time that we finish now.
All right. Well, I would like to invite you all to upcoming EDU-TALKs. On July 23rd, next Tuesday, we have Brian Traskos, Trauma-Informed Practice, an evidence-based approach to inclusive, compassionate, and holistic care. That is a massage-focused talk, but anyone is welcome to listen in. August 6th, we'll have James Wislowski discussing quick manual therapy techniques for musculoskeletal pain relief. Again, massage focused, but these talks are so educational that you're invited to join us. August 13th is our next EDU-TALK Diabetes series with Dale Alexander, who has been on this call and submitted the first chat tonight, and an evolutionary perspective on diabetes, how body work may assist. So we have some really good EDU-TALKs coming up, not only for you, but for your clients. And we'd love you to join us in the future. Please visit the EDU-TALK archived libraries, which can be found on biotone.com under the EDU-TALK tab. Michael, thank you so much for sharing so much information and resources. And the blue zones are 5 areas around the planet with the longest lived people. So those,
Hallelujah.
yes,
Hallelujah. The long life.
Those that have lived long lives, they have actually done studies on the foods that they're eating
Right.
and how it supports that healthy lifestyle and longevity. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Keep an eye on your inbox. Michael, thank you. We'll see you in 2025. And
Thank you.
well, everyone, take care. Eat
Bye-bye.
well.
Ah!
Bye.